Okay, welcome back. So I'm going to take a moment and pour me some tea here. A bit of a aloe berry tea. Kind of bright, kind of refreshing. Can's a nice color orange. Makes me feel bright and fresh. Let's make an adjustment here. Okay, cool. Okay, let's have some tea. Okay, on full you go. So, verse 19 of the Tao Te Ching, episode 19. Welcome back. Today's going to be another short one. Today I'm going to discuss Shen Gong a little bit. And I'm going to read you verse 19 of Tao Te Ching. I'm going to drink my tea, most importantly. There'll be a little bit of free flow as normal. So let's get into verse 19. Let's see here. Hope you all had an awesome week. Today is August 8th, and it's the end of the Lion Gates portal. So people have been very heavy lately. Life can be very heavy sometimes. When we get downloads and are kind of creating something new and evolving, sometimes it's heavy and it's not always this like gung-ho feeling. Like everyone talks about spirituality being this like amazing, great gung-ho thing. And when you're looking back on a process, yeah, it's great. But when you're going through a process, sometimes it really sucks. So anyway, hope this Lion's Gate hasn't been too heavy on you. So chapter 19. Do away with learning, and grief will not be known. So what is grief? Well, grief is sadness, yeah. And why do we get sad? Because we hold on to things, we're attached to things, yeah. So the act of learning is acquiring more knowledge or information. So and you build it on top of each other, right? It starts compounding, yeah. Which is to hold on to something. And that is essentially, well, grief is a sadness of letting something go, okay? So in the way that nature works, things come and things go. Let's say if an animal has a habitat, yeah, where they live, they may sleep somewhere for so long and then switch places. They don't sleep in one spot for the entirety of their life. Most animals don't. So this is they understand the process of having to evolve and change. And maybe this is their home for a little while, and then all of a sudden, a pack of hyenas move in, and then the animal has to move to another area, right? It's very common. Or humans come by and cut the trees of the forest down, taking the home of all the birds and the insects and everything that lives there, yeah? Cutting the trees. Now, look, I'm not a tree hugger. I love paper. It's very useful. I love money. Very useful, right? But I do think that there are better ways that we could go about things in the world. And I think that a lot of industries that are still standing today are solely based off of money, especially when it comes to energy. We've seen that we don't have to run off grid more than enough energy to support the system without being on gas or electric, yeah. But that's what we choose to use. We've seen ways that we can harness solar power, wind power, water power. And you may say, well, all these things don't work all year round. Well, no, you're right. But a combination of them would. And then you have batteries that back up this energy, right? So And I'm not saying get rid of all electric plants. What if you reduce a lot of them? On the opposite side, the reality grounding side of this is that, well, a lot of people would lose their jobs. And then they would have to figure out to go into something else, of course, right? But most people don't want to, quote unquote, be forced to lose their job. So, we could keep a electric, we could keep some, stations, grids that create electricity, but we probably need as many as we have. We could definitely reduce it by some, yeah. Same thing with gas, reducing the pollution in the air and these types of things, living more harmonious in nature. And we know it can be done because there are places that do it. There are people in communities that do it. They're not massive, but they do it, and they live just as comfortable as we are, and they probably are healthier. Most of them are because they live in tune with nature, and they don't have all the modern stress and anxiety and thought patterns of people living in cities. But anyway, I digress. So, do away with learning and grief will not be known. If your life wasn't based around learning and acquiring this knowledge and information, when you had to, because see, they say if you want to be smart, you acquire more knowledge. If you want to be knowledgeable, right, you acquire more knowledge. But if you want to be wise, you rid yourself of knowledge. You rid yourself of things, yeah. But I'll give you something, for example, kids in school nowadays, modern schooling. The kids are pushed so hard to learn so much, to be so intelligent before they even graduate high school, which puts them in their brain thinking a lot. And in some ways, it's great because certain kids understand that people took a long time to learn, and that has its value, right? But we're more than just our brain of thinking. We have our breath of emotions and our body that moves and is something, yeah. And listen, for thousands of years we lived healthily without all of this knowledge. Now, I'm not saying to do away with knowledge, but following the verse here, do away with learning and grief will not be known. So these kids are so smart nowadays in high school, but yet depression rates have increased, anxiety rates have increased. All of these things have increased because the kids become so smart and knowledgeable about all these things. And he's always thinking about he's got to do this and that so that people see him a certain way. He's got to do this because this means this and that means that, and someone did that means this, and just constantly thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. That oftentimes these kids come out of high school and they've got all these book smart, but no grounded life common sense knowledge to balance it out. So they're very much top heavy. Okay. Anyway, though, my point behind this was that depression, anxiety has shot up in high schools way more than it used to be, right? Due to massive amounts of learning. And I'm not saying learning and education doesn't have its benefit, but we cram so much information so fast, and nowadays it's a lot. It's just a lot. I mean, I know high school kids now that are taking courses I was taking in college. Some middle school kids are close to taking college courses. It's everything is set to prep them to go to college, to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there are plenty of people that don't have degrees that make a successful living. They don't have a college degree. And a lot of colleges are set up for you to run a certain course, but it doesn't give you the life experience. Yeah. Which the knowledge is worthless without the experience, in my opinion, if you ask me. In fact, the knowledge often came from people who acquired it through the experience. So if you want to give someone the knowledge, you should make them earn it through the experience. Now, I'm not saying to not tell people, make people aware of things, but you need to put them in scenarios and give them real life experiences that make them acquire this knowledge on their own so that it becomes theirs, and that is something they're intellectually parroting back. Again, I digress. Do away with sageness and eject wisdom, and the people will be more benefited 100 times. So, again, there's a lot to be said about knowing everything, knowing things. If I know everything and I'm so wise, because wisdom comes from knowledge, from experience that I've done over and over, and I've extracted some information or wisdom out of it, right? But that means that when I go forward in life, that wisdom that I gained from something in the past, I'm going to apply that going forward. The thing about that is that often blocks you from acquiring new knowledge and information, or having a new experience, a fresh experience. How about that? So, being wise is great, but don't be too wise. Empty your cup, as they say. And on that note, I'm going to have a sip of tea. Do away with benevolence and eject righteousness, and people will return to filial duty and parental love. Do away with benevolence and eject righteousness. You're so righteous that you can't love your kid in the way that they need to be loved, because, well, that's not effective parenting, and that's not effective learning, and right? Or, well, you don't do this because that'll create this. Well, maybe in 5 kids, but not every kid. Yeah, every kid's different, so they're gonna have different experiences. And slapping a kid in the back of the head, one kid might make them listen. Another kid might give them self-esteem issues. Another kid might make them angry bullies that beat up other people. So every kid's different. You have to look at your intention of what you want to do, doing it, what's actually done, and then the effect of what actually happens. Because Karen could take the kid's phone away and get a result, and you could try that on your kid and it give you 0 result. I mean, I don't even have kids, but I have enough nephews to know that all kids are different, and I've had animals and pets before, and they're all different. What works on one doesn't always work on the other. So you have a combination of ideas that work. Yeah. Do away with artifice and eject gains, and there will be no robbers and thieves. I love that. So, especially like nowadays, the culture and the world is set up on what can you get, right? So, like, if you do your work, then you get this reward, right? So I'm going to reward myself for doing this hard work. And I'm not opposed to the reward system. It's a great positive way of thinking. But if it's your only way of thinking, I think there's a bit problematic there. And I think the main point behind this is to take away to not be so focused on getting gains. And like, you could put this to people who lift weights, right? So there's a period of time in my life when I was lifting a lot of weights, and a friend, I'm that kind of person that I'll run hard until I just burn out sometimes. Well, a friend put me on like a routine, and it was sometimes hard to stay to the routine because I wanted to do more than that. But I noticed good results by just sticking to the routine and focusing on enjoying the workout. And that was actually one of the parts that I really enjoyed, was the newness of the workout, the, kind of mastering this specific exercise I was doing with these weights. And then feeling how that thing changed when I changed the weights, and feeling how my body changed with it, how my thought pattern changed, how my energy levels changed, all these things, right? So, because in the routine our friend gave me, you bulked for a period of time, and then you, bulking is not the right word. Let me take that back. Not bulk, but you were building your strength up, you were acquiring your strength, and then you had a hypertrophy stage where you kind of like maintained that heavy weight with more reps, and then you had a cutting phase where you would drop down weight a little bit, but you would do a lot more reps. Or even doing the same weight, but just a lot of reps. So you do 3 to 5 reps to build the strength. Then you do 8 to 12 at your hypertrophy, and then you do 15 to 20. So anyway, but not getting caught up with the gains of how I look and just enjoying the process, yeah. And if there was nothing to gain, I wouldn't need to try and like steal something, right? So if someone is poor and they want money, then they rob someone for the money that the person has. The person who has that money, they gain this money through their quote unquote hard work, right? Which a lot of times you just break in the system and you thought something away that someone doesn't to create a value for them. But people who don't have that money and that idea think that that person is so smart and whatever because they're wealthy. Some wealthy people are not that bright. They're just okay with taking people's money. These 4, if we consider them as a culture, are not sufficient. Therefore, let there be what the people can resort to. Appear in plainness and hold to simplicity. Right? So I'll make a martial arts illusion. I often like to say that the advanced stuff is just fancy basics, right? It's just the basics done in a different fashion, in a different way, a higher level basic. But the root and the foundation is still the basics, the plain and simple. A wrist lock is still a wrist lock, no matter if you take the person and put them down on their face, or you turn the person to the side, or you put them down on their knee, or you put them down and kick them back through the wrist lock. All these things, it's just a wrist lock, and you just took it in different directions, right? Same thing with a punch. A punch to the face, a punch to the throat, a punch to the chest, a punch to the solar plexus, a punch to the abdomen. It's just a punch. Now it may yield a different result, but at the end of the day, it's just a punch. What did Bruce Lee say? A punch is a punch. And then it's not until again a punch is a punch, right? So you when I think about fighting martial arts, oftentimes to demo something to someone, or someone hears I do martial arts and they want to see something or whatever, I might throw a fancy flashy kick or whatever, but in the reality of the fight, I'm very small percentage I'm throwing something like that. I'm doing basic 1s and 2s and front kicks and side kicks to the knee and these kinds of things. Like all this fancy stuff, it has its place. Sometimes I might throw a fancy kick in there as a setup to then make a strike. Okay, but a lot of times it's just a setup. And I might throw it and off the chance that I get lucky and it does knock the guy out, but it's not 100. It's not 90% of what I'm doing. It's maybe 2%, yeah? Whereas 90% of what I might be doing is just a punch or just a palm strike. Maybe coming from different angles and different, heaviness or lightness, different speeds, different rhythms, but it's still just a palm strike. It's plain and simple, it's a palm strike. And your bread and butter, that's what wins your fight. Bread and butter, dude. Bread and butter. You don't live without your bread and butter, I'm just saying. And under stress and duress and chaos, you're going to resort to the basics, your bread and butter, the basic, most simple things. And I'll give this allusion to working in a restaurant. When you got one table, you can pull out all the stops with your decanting wine. And you can do all the tricks and hold the bottle in a nice way. And you can change the level of the pour and all these like cool gimmicks and things that look like amazing. And they make people like, oh wow, he really knows what he's doing. But let me give you 6 tables at the same time and see how much of that you're doing. Probably not much. It's probably, hey, have we decided we want to eat? Cool, okay. Got it, great. Crab, no crab, okay. Medium rare is good, all right, great, got it. I'm not going to go into the definition of what medium rare looks like. I'm not going to tell you how much crab we got or the way that we receive it or how it's processed. None of that, because I don't have time. I got to go to my bread and butter. What do you want? And I got to get it in the computer. You know what I mean? We receive it or how it's processed. None of that, because I don't have time. I got to go to my bread and butter. What do you want? And I got to get it in the computer. You know what I mean? When you start adding all these modifications and specialized things to it, and then there becomes room for error. So if you want to have a successful turnout, and this is a hard thing for a lot of people, restrain selfishness and curtail desires. So keep your desires minimal. If someone does something that makes me angry, if I'm being selfish, well, then I punish them, and I'm really mean to them. But if I'm thinking of them, then I think, well, why did they do this thing that was mean to me, right? Is it because this is how they've learned to survive in their life, and that's how they learn to treat people because they were taught and learned through life that that's how they survive, and they're living in a state of survival. Curtail your desires. So when you want all these things out of life, you're like a little rabbit, bing, 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 but you don't get far down a path because you're zigzagging left and right. Da, 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 da. But if you just keep it simple and have one thing you want, and you just stay down this main path, you'll get there a lot faster than if you're zigzagging and, I kind of like a little bit of this, and I want a little bit of this, and I go over here and I want a little bit of this, and I go over here and I want a little bit of this. Now, I'm not saying that you can't do that, but when you have too many desires and you want too much at one time, and you create expectations, you might create these expectations, and people let you down, and you're upset with them because they let you down. Just another avenue you could go down. So, don't be selfish. If you have to give to others. If you know and you can help others learn, help them learn. Yeah. I'm often taken aback when someone does a really, really small act of kindness that I just wouldn't even get back. When you drop something, people hear it because it hits the ground, and then they might look and see, and then they kind of like wait and say, "Oh, they're gonna let you pick it up, right?" But some people just say, "Oh, I fell," and then turn around and walk off. Well, I was walking past a table, and this wasn't because I'm at work. It's just how I felt. The lady dropped something, and I didn't know what it was. The sound was odd to me, so I looked like, whoa, that's a weird sound. It wasn't a piece of silverware, and it wasn't a plate. Like, what was that sound? And it was actually a piece of ice, of all things. I don't know how I got out of the glass, because the glass was a few inches from the edge of the table. I don't know if she was stirring it, and it kind of like popped out because the glass was full of ice and liquid, and the glass does it. And I just was like, oh, look, I didn't know what it was, but it caught my attention. I was like, oh, let me pick this up for this lady. And I picked it up. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. No worries. And it was just a piece of ice. And I just took it and, threw it in the trash or in the sink. But I also think, like, she was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, she did something wrong or bad. I don't think she threw the ice on the floor on purpose. I think it probably accidentally do a nice thing because I saw that something or heard that something fell and it caught my attention. I said, well, let me pick up whatever this is for this lady. Another time, a lady dumped her wallet open and like a bunch of papers and everything and cards came out, and I just like went right over and picked it up and gave it to her. And she was like, oh, clumsy me or something like that, kind of like a low self-talk kind of thing to me. But it was like a way of social grace for what she did. I'm not judging you because you dropped something. You're not a robot. It happens. People drop things, So anyway, now you can use meditation to cultivate and develop your Shen Gong, but meditation is not Shen Gong. Can be used to develop your Shen, but you can develop your Shen with a state of peace or happiness, or just cultivate the energy there to be utilized any way you want. So Shen Gong is the work that you do to cultivate your spirit. But it's not exactly meditation. want to kind of make that little distinction, yeah. So when I was first learning about it, for me, I just thought that it was meditation, which Shen is the heart and mind. So it can be mental work, but it can also be things that are combined between the heart and mind. Anyway, that's all the time I got for today. Cheers.